Hello and welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. My name is Laura Bradburn. It's Friday and that can mean only one thing. I'm joined by Anthony Haggerty and Jim Orr. How are you, gentlemen?
Good, Laura. Afternoon.
Hi, good, Laura, as well.
Well, it's been another, I have to say, quite a quiet week in the world of Celtic as far as things go compared to the rest of this season. I was kind of wondering what we were going to talk about, and then looking at the news this morning, I saw something that quite frankly made my blood simmer, if not boil. But Mr. Brendan Rodgers is coming in for Odsonne Edouard, and he looks like he might be trying to get him on the cheap. By the looks of things, 15 million is the price going around. I would have expected a lot more than that. Quotes of 20 million and above is what I'd seen beforehand. So, Jim, I'll come to you first. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think 15 million is a little bit cheeky from Brendan, or do you think it's probably the going rate given the season Odsonne's had?
I think it's a hard one, Laura, in that I think if this time last year, before COVID hit, you're looking at upwards of 30 million for Eddie, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Basically, he's the all-time top goal scorer for the world champions under 21s. So, other people in that team are going to go for silly money. And just the fact he plays in a SPL team doesn't make him any less the player. So I thought this time last year, before COVID, at least over £30 million, because he's like a superstar. A year on, middle of COVID, he's had COVID himself. The market's depressed. It's kind of difficult when I think we can only get what people are willing to pay, and obviously there's a big there's a big percentage of that is going to go to his other club, so we might end up with not a lot of money. It's just unfortunate. I mean, I think obviously football is a kind of fairly insignificant thing given the current COVID situation, but it's not been a good season for this to happen. In terms of if it happened last year, we'd have got good money for him. This year, I think we're just going to have to take what we can get. If it's 15 million, it's 15 million.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I think the major issue with it, and probably is going to affect the transfer market as a whole, is I think there's going to be a lot of clubs desperate for the money that they can get, and they're going to go possibly take cheaper offers for players just because they need that money in to contend with any issues with cash flow. Anthony, do you think Celtic will still hold out for a higher fee, or do you think that we're in a position where we have to kind of cover our losses from this season and potentially take a shortfall on it?
Well, the joke that I read before I came on there was 15 million for Eddie. Which leg? Right? I thought, I'm going back to what Jim said. You're talking about a 30 million player 12 months ago. I think Celtic might have to bite the bullet on this one, for all the reasons that Jim pointed out. And whilst it's not ideal, we've got a player here that wants to go. He clearly wants to go, so you get what somebody's willing to pay. If it's 15 million, you feel that it is on the cheap, but we just have to bite the bullet and accept it. And it's the high sell-on clause that I think everybody's kind of concerned about. That they might not make a lot of money on their initial outlay. And for that to happen to a player like Eddie is really unfortunate. But it's just been an unfortunate set of circumstances. And if we can get it to anywhere near 20 million, then fine, it's maybe some kind of recompense, but I think we'll be lucky to get anything above 20 million or 20 million if those figures seem to be kind of bang on. And I think, obviously Eddie wants to go. Rodgers knows he can take advantage of that situation. So I think it's one of those situations where Celtic just have to say, okay, the cards haven't stacked up in their favour, we'll just have to move on and get as much.
I think also if we manage to get 5 or 6 teams interested in them and some sort of bidding war going, maybe that's something that's going to push the price up. And also you would hope to think that we could take advantage of that if we're going to buy players, because actually looking back on it, in the summer transfer window last year, we seemed to overpay for players at a time where you would think we could get players for a bit less. So the $5 million for Bacchus, the $5 million for Ajeti, one would have thought we could get these players a wee bit cheaper than that. So hopefully we can maybe bring some players in for a bit less than what we'd have thought of.
Well, the hope is that Arsenal still renew their interest as well, or would want to fight Leicester, as you say, Jim, and create that bid war, which would be a win-win for Celtic. So that's your big hope moving forward. If these teams are, if a team like Arsenal is genuinely interested, so that's what we can hope to maybe push the price up.
I think the other thing I would say as well is, and this is not to incur the wrath of the commenters and things like that, but I would hope that any deal for Edouard, if we accept that one is inevitable, that any deal for him potentially gets done before Peter Lawwell vacates his post, because as we all know, he is a tough negotiator, and I think probably we have a better chance of getting a decent fee for him in the way we got a decent fee for Dembele from Lyon and various other ones. So that's probably something that, you know, as a parting gift, he can maybe right that wrong for us. But we'll see what happens. Jim, do you think there's a chance of a fire sale of that nature? Do you think Edouard would be followed out by the likes of Ayer and other high profile players in the squad, or do you think that we'll do our best to try and keep some of the other ones if we do make a big sale on Edouard?
I think you've always got to look at these things, Laura, from the actual player's point of view. If you're a player at Celtic just now and know you can go for big money, I mean, there's a number of Celtic players compared to other teams are not getting paid that much. And I think the one person or the one player we'd all like to say is big Chris Ayer. But if you're Chris Ayer, you can double, treble, quadruple your wages going somewhere else, play in a better league. So from his point of view, I'd love him to stay, but I think he'll go. Edouard's head's away. I mean, he's been just showboating for the past few games. It's dead annoying watching him these days. Ryan Christie, I think, will want to go because he's not getting paid as much as other people. And there could be two or three others as well. So, yeah, I think, I wouldn't call it a fire sale. It's, I think we're going to lose some players. I think the new manager's got a huge challenge to try and put some sort of team together. Put 11 half-decent players on the park. I mean, what we've had in seasons gone by, we've had good teams come into each season, so all you're going to have to do is add 2 or 3 players to it. This close season is going to be, very interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a chance that we could end up with a very unrecognisable team next season. We might end up with Klimala and Ajeti up front. Who knows? It's one of these situations that we're it's more unpredictable than I think it has been for a number of years. Anthony, your thoughts on players exiting the club and things like that. I think Jim makes a fair point of, what is the point of keeping players, regardless of what we can get for them financially? What is the point in keeping them if they do not want to be here? We've all seen what that can do to a squad morale and that kind of thing. It's not good for anybody to keep them, even if we have to take a kind of cut our losses and getting rid of them.
Yeah, I think if these players want to go, they have to be shipped out. And you get top dollar as Celtic can for these players, then so be it. There's also a big concern, Laura, as well. There's 106 days to the first Champions League qualifier. We've no manager, and we've named about 3 or 4 players that could be leaving. The Jim's just started up on that. That's a big ask for any manager coming in to shape a team and get them in any kind of formation or any kind of style before you enter a competition of such magnitude. 106 days, that it might seem a wee while, but it's not very long. When we're talking about Chris Ayer, Eddie and Christie, that's a huge part of your team that's leaving. Or could be potentially leaving. That's a massive gap. Now, I, myself and Jim have spoken about this. We hope that Celtic have done their due diligence and there are people working behind the scenes right now, this new management team that's coming in, director of football or head coach structure, whatever it may be, and that they're identifying these players and this will happen in due course. So that's what you've got to hope's happening. Because see if it's not, you could be in bother again. You'd end up getting into the Champions League qualifiers again, ill-prepared, when it was just supposed to be a brand new dawn. And I'd hate to see a new manager fall at the first hurdle because Celtic are ill-prepared again. They have to give any new people coming in every chance to succeed in this competition and get everybody singing from the same hymn sheet and on side again.
Absolutely. Well, I've just made an error there because I was called Laura Absolutely Bradburn last week after my repeated use of the word, so I'll try and avoid that this week.
Absolutely,
as
good.
People,
good.
as I'm sure people can appreciate, it was my first week hosting, so I was a little bit nervous and relying on what I would call verbal crutches to get me through the first hour, so we'll try and avoid that. But just to touch on what you said, Zinkovics, who comments a lot, supports the channel a lot, so thanks very much for commenting on YouTube. It better not be a last minute panic scramble again, and I think that reflects what we're talking about, especially being a club where our season repeatedly starts so early in the summer. We have to, probably take extra steps to make sure that doesn't happen, even more so than other clubs. And like Zinkovic, you can comment on YouTube, on Facebook, or on Twitter. We're live on all those platforms. We're part of the State of Mind channel. So if you haven't subscribed yet, go over to YouTube and do that. You can do that for free, and you get lots of daily content. I think we're up to something like 3 or 4 shows a day now that you can see. We've got things like Amy Canavan's new Soccer Supernova show. We've got the Salt and Sauce chat show. There's lots out there for you, even if football isn't your bag, but we will get back to talking about Celtic. One of the disadvantages we have on the Friday podcast is we can sometimes end up covering subjects and topics that have been talked over ad nauseum. One subject that might fall into that category, but I still wanted to get your thoughts on, was the comments Jeremy Frimpong made in a press conference at the beginning of the week. Now, for anybody who didn't see it, I'm going to read it out pretty much as accurately as I could transcribe it when I was listening to it. So Frimpong was basically asked about, his departure from Celtic and what happened there, and he said, there was always going to be a point where they can't win everything. There was always going to be a time where they have to lose. So the criticism Neil Lennon was getting was a bit over the top, because in football it's normal. But I feel like Celtic, the fans, they were so used to winning that when they started going down, they didn't know how to feel about it. Now, I watched that, and the only word I can use to describe my feelings about it was I was absolutely apoplectic. I thought it was completely, short-sighted on his part, and perhaps more concerning, maybe spoke to a wider issue in terms of the attitude of the current squad and the current staff. I remember growing up and not seeing Celtic win anything really domestically for the first sort of decade of my life. You guys obviously will remember even more hardships in the early 90s and some points during the 80s. Jim, I'll come to you first. What did you make of Jeremy Frimpong's comments? Were they the comments of a sort of young, naive guy who didn't really know what he was talking about? And more importantly, do you think they are attitudes that are reflected in players that are still remaining at the club?
Yes and yes. I think he's the type of player that you're going to see more and more. And I think we'll get back to one of my favourite words, expectations. I think that's what will happen more and more in the future. And I think fans will become less and less attached to the players in the teams. You're not going to have players. The players who are any good will be here for 2 or 3 years and then go. So don't get too attached to those players, because again, if you put yourself in their shoes, I would do exactly what he's done. I might not have said what he said, but at the end of the day, that's a job for them. So you want to get the best job possible, get paid as much money as possible, move on to the next club, and so on and so forth. And that's what all players will do. I don't think he was here long enough to understand what was at stake. And I think that's a big concern. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons that we didn't manage to do the 10 this year. But I just think that football is becoming more and more like chess to me, in that it's about structures and formations, and the players don't matter that much. You're going to have 1 or 2 who'll be your kind of big favourites and so on and so forth. But I think football is becoming more and more functional, and you're going to get players here for 2 or 3 years. If they're not any good, they'll be away. If they're not that good, you maybe keep them for a bit longer time. But I can totally understand where he's coming from his point of view. It's disappointing to hear it, as you say, but hey-ho, it is what it is.
I think looking at it, Tony, the comment that really irked me more than a lot of things, I mean, I can see why he might want to defend Neil Lennon and say that there was an overreaction and that kind of thing. To tell a group of supporters who, many of whom have been supporting Celtic longer than he's even been alive, that it's normal in football to lose. I mean, I find that a very sort of patronising comment to make, and perhaps I'm doing him a disservice. Maybe he was searching for words in a situation where he felt a bit under duress. We all know when you're on a public platform that you can sometimes say things that on reflection you maybe don't mean quite in the way that they came out. What I wanted to focus on as well was, bearing in mind the fact that Neil Lennon said that he thought that it wasn't what was it he used? Not car crash, but it wasn't the complete unmitigated disaster or whatever it was he said a few weeks ago. Do you think that, combined with Jeremy Frimpong's comments, mean that, there was nobody at the club telling these new players, this is what you're here for, this is what this means, and teaching them a bit of the history? Do you think that's missing in the current setup?
Well, I'll tell you what, Jeremy Frimpong didn't understand the history then, and that's shameful if he didn't understand what 10 meant to the supporters. And you cannot play for Celtic and go for 10 in a row and not understand what that figure in the ether actually means. It was huge, it was monumental. I got a message for Jeremy Frimpong as well. You regressed as a footballer. You regressed at Celtic as a footballer. So why come out and slag the Celtic fans? The Celtic fans love to see you get forward, but you had no final ball. So what were you doing to address that situation, address the unmitigated disaster? Did you take 100 footballs, go down the line and cross them into a centre-forward's head after training? No, you probably didn't, till it became second nature. You can have all the speed in the world, Jeremy Frimpong, but I hardly saw you set up any goals for Celtic after a bright start. So I'm not particularly fussed that Jeremy Frimpong's left. But to come out and say stuff like that, getting used to losing and stuff, that's fine. We can accept losing. I've said this before. What we can't accept is players not dedicating themselves to their craft, to their job, and having a laissez-faire attitude about a season that meant so much to everybody when they couldn't watch it and paid through the nose for streams that went on the blink and would love to have been there to cheer them on. So the least you can do is give your all. And reading between the lines, it seems to me that he was talking about that there was this kind of, as I said, I mentioned what laissez-faire attitude about this season. Can't understand that. It was special. It was important. I
think if that was the attitude, Tony, then whose fault was that? Sorry, Tony.
Yeah.
I think if that was the attitude, then whose fault was that to let that happen? I just think it's back to expectations again. I think the reason that Celtic have to win every game because they're the biggest club. Well, they are the biggest club, so therefore we should win every game. If we don't win every game, then there's something wrong. I accept the fact we've got major rivals who have, they have just had an unbelievable season this season. But any other season, apart from one team, we should blow most teams away, and that's why if we drop any points, it's a bad thing. He's moved to a club where the expectations will not be to win every single game. And if you go to some of the big clubs in England, your Arsenals and your Chelseas of this world, they don't expect to win every single game because they're in a fiercely hard league to win. So I'm not so sure he got the expectation thing. And if it was a kind of laissez-faire season for him, then I blame the management for that. Because he shouldn't have been playing then.
Yeah, it's a collective, isn't it? From the board to the players. The blame lies with everybody. That's what I'm kind of saying. But I can't understand that attitude, as you say. How has that been allowed to permeate the club in this season of all seasons? I just can't understand that. And I accept players like Frimpong will come along and they won't play, like you said, they'll play for 2 or 3 years, because a lot of them use Celtic as a stepping stone to bigger and better things. We accept that. But when you're here, give your all, go with our blessing. And Frimpong left and kind of under a cloud. People were divided on when he left about how they felt about him, because he did make a promising start, but he seemed to regress badly. And a lot of the things, I want players to get the basics right. And at the end of his Celtic career, Frimpong wasn't getting the basics right. And again, go back to what you said, Jim, how was that allowed to happen? How can that whole kind of structure just fall apart from boardroom to first team management level to the first team players in a season where it was teed up for, you know, a monumental piece of history, and it has just gone so wrong.
I think you said last week, from Neil Lennon's point, he doesn't do tactics, so just go in the park and play. So if that's the instructions the players are getting, then it's no surprise that they've regressed, you know. So, but I just think he's the type of player you're going to see more and more. They're going to come in for 2 or 3 years maximum, and then leave as soon as possible. So I think we have to get used to that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, and you don't get too attached.
Yeah, don't get too attached.
They'll leave, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, Bernadette on YouTube has commented very naive comments from Frimpong, but typical modern day footballer. It's a job to them. They have no real affinity to their clubs, and I think that sums it up pretty well. Jungle Lion also on Twitter saying, going by the season, he wasn't the only one thinking that. It's pretty pathetic. So I mean, I think we're all on the same hymn sheet as far as that's concerned. The frustration for me is that you know, I would have even understood it a little bit more from the point of view of a player like a Jetty or somebody like that who's literally only come in this season, who doesn't know how we played prior to this season. Frimpong knows how dominant we can be from his first season. He knows what standards we set for them last season. How he can say that it's an overreaction to be disappointed in the way that things have turned out is beyond me, because as I've said before, it's not even the fact that we're going to lose the 10 that upsets me. It's the manner in which it's been done. It's the complete capitulation of the team and the standards, and going from, you know, a few years ago not even losing a single game in the entire season to now kind of shrugging your shoulders a little bit when we used to lose to Ross County. So it get kind of, I find it kind of baffling, and I sincerely hope. Yeah, sorry, Jim.
I was just going to say, I think I'd echo the comments that Mr. Haggerty made there, that maybe if we have our best 11 players, I don't think he would be in the team. I think he's one of these guys that he'll play very well when we're playing well, and if we're not playing particularly well, I don't think he plays particularly well. And you need everyone playing 7, 8 out of 10 every game. He's one of these guys that I think, if the chips are down, I'm not saying he hides, because that'd be a wee bit harsh, but he's not somebody who you could look to try and help you out of a situation. So I wasn't that fussed that he went, because I don't think, as I said, if everyone's fit, he wasn't my 11 players. And I said months and months ago, it was a kind of strange one for me, because he wasn't a fullback, he wasn't a wing back, and he wasn't a winger. And I thought, well, where do you play the guy? I'm not very sure where you play him. And it certainly wouldn't have been in my 11, and therefore to get the money that we got for him, I think was an astonishing piece of business. After what he said, obviously we're not that bothered at the end of the day. We move on.
Yeah. Absolutely. Anthony, just to touch on something that Jim said there, when the chips are down, he potentially was a player who you couldn't rely on to kind of pull us up by the bootstraps and that kind of thing. Who do we have in the current squad that we can say does that? I was trying to think, as Jim was saying that, of somebody who falls into that category, and I'm struggling. I mean, I think Christopher Ayer maybe comes about as close as you can get, but I'm struggling to think of anybody else. I think Scott Brown appears less potent in terms of his impact than he has done in previous seasons. So, you know, who do you see as somebody that can do that for us?
I think David Turnbull would have been able to kind of play some part if he'd have played a bigger part in the first team this season. You know, I get back to how it took a dead rubber in the Europa League for Neil Lennon to see that this guy could actually play. Yeah. You know, you watch them in training every day. You don't need to watch Turnbull in training every day to know he's a footballer. Jim said that I'm not, but he would have been able to play some kind of significant part moving forward, and maybe picked you up by the bootlaces. Sorrow as well, coming in, making an impact. Now, what were they seeing at training that you couldn't place those two players in the team? Scott Brown is coming to the end of his Celtic career. We all know that. We accept that. Rodgers got a great tune out of him because Rodgers was a good man manager. going back to management again and stuff like that. So Rodgers got a lot out of players like Forrest and stuff as well, improved them, because he's a football manager, right? So whatever happened with the team this season, a lot of it could be placed at the management team's door because they weren't getting a tune out the players. Ayer, you've already mentioned. Well, Ayer's the one that you want to stay, but his head's probably elsewhere. But Turnbull is a baller. He's a footballer. He's a guy who you can build your team around, but you need good players around him. You need quality players around him for him to flourish and thrive. And go back to what you said, that there was not many who, when the chips were down, said, you know what, rolled up their sleeves and got stuck in. They just seemed to accept their fate in a lot of games this season. And you can... I think
yeah.
Go on, Jim.
When you go, Tony, sorry. No, I was going to say the one player that I like, and I know it's not a very popular opinion, is Ryan Christie. I think Ryan Christie's a guy who takes risks. He's a game changer. He always gives 100%. He never hides. So, I know that he's had a bit of a kind of hard time maybe the second half of this season, but the first half of this season, he was the guy that took risks. He changed games. He never hides. And I'd always have guys like that in the team, even if he's hitting the ball 50 yards over the bar every so often. I'm a big fan of Christie. I would try and keep Christie, but again, I think you can get far more money elsewhere. And if I'm his shoes, I'm away.
I'm in total agreement with you as far as Christie's concerned, Jim. I like players, like you say, who take risks. I think far too often in the past we've had players who aren't willing to, for want of a better phrase, take a dig from outside the box, because every once in a while they do fly in, and we've seen it happen before. I quite like it, especially when, as we've had this season, problems sort of breaking down defences and things like that. Sometimes it's going to be a shot from outside the box that's going to break the deadlock for you. But Tony, just to pick up on a point that I think we've been kind of sort of dancing around a little bit. I've seen a few people on the podcast this week come out in support of Scott Brown and say they want his presence to remain at the club, even if he's not a player. He needs to be a coach. He needs to be there. He needs to be teaching the players coming through what it means to be a Celtic player, what it means to be a Celtic captain. I have to say, I'm not teeing you up for anything here, but I am not in agreement with that whatsoever. I think he has undoubtedly served the club well in the last decade. He's done a lot of good things. He's had his issues on the field in terms of temperament and things like that. But, a player of his nature is going to... I struggle to see the evidence to suggest why he would be a good influence as a coach going forward. He's obviously not had a great influence this season. What makes you think that that's going to happen magically next season, even if he doesn't play? What are your thoughts? Do you think he's somebody we need to keep around, or is a clean break from Scott Brown something that we need to consider going forward?
I think it'd be worthwhile keeping around in terms of letting him learn the coaching ropes. I think it may be fair to say that this year he's not shown much in coaching wise, because he's still playing, he's still a player in his mind. Also, I think if you say to him at the end of this season, look, Scott, that's it, we don't want you to play anymore, but here's our role coaching academy kids, and then we'll monitor your progress going forward and see if we can sort of let you graduate through your coaching badges. He's a winner, and has been a winner, and been a winner for a long, long time. Been very consistent. I think he has something to offer Celtic coming forward, but only if he does get a chance at coaching and there's signs of progression. If not, then I'd be willing to say at some point, look, this isn't happening. Go and find your future elsewhere. But I still think he has something to offer, because he's got lots of experience. He's played in every big game for Celtic in the past 10, 11, 12 years. So there is something there. He can channel that as a coach and give that, instill that. I mean, he could have been the guy instilling some players about the 10. You're asking about that. So you'd be looking at somebody like Scott Brown to instill that. Why that didn't happen, I don't know. Maybe was he too concentrating on his own kind of swan song? You just don't know. But I think he has something to offer, and I would like to see him get that chance. It's up to him whether he takes it or not on a coaching level. I mean, people will differ, their opinions will differ, but that's certainly my opinion.
Jim, I'm seeing a lot of comments coming through. Some people totally on side with me as far as Brown's concerned, wanting a clean break. Others with Tony saying that he should definitely be kept around in the club in some capacity, and some people even saying that there's an argument to be made that an extra season as a player is something that should be considered. Now, I think that's something that seems to have been as much a part of the last 5 years of Celtic as winning the title in repeated seasons, is this conversation over whether we should offer Scott Brown a new deal. Do you see a future for him as a player, or do you think, this should be it for him, and any influence that he has at the club should be kept strictly off the field?
I'm in the same side as Tony. I would definitely keep him. He's a strong character, and you need strong characters in the dressing room. I'd keep him as club captain and make somebody else team captain. It'd be great if that was Aya, but I'd certainly make him club captain. I wouldn't play him that much, maybe bring him on the last half hour of certain games. I'd have him in the coaching staff in some sort of capacity. I would certainly keep him for that extra year. I don't see any harm in doing that. But that's just me. I mean, whoever the new manager is coming in might not fancy Scott Brown at all. So if it was me doing it, I'd certainly keep Scott Brown, because so many key players are going to leave. I think it would be a bit counterproductive to let Scott Brown go. Mm-hmm.
Well, there we are, folks. You can't say there isn't a difference of opinion on a Celtic State of Mind, because we've just displayed it for all to see. Thanks very much for your opinions coming through on the comments. We're seeing them all coming through. As I say, we're live on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. You can subscribe at A Celtic State of Mind for lots of different content coming through every day on the channel for free. It's all there, and you can get involved with all the shows that are available. Now, moving on to slightly more nostalgic, slightly more happier times. Now, I'm aware we did a birthday wish last week, and I'm at pains to stress that Friday Axon Pod is not becoming the subsidiary of the Celtic Twitter feed. We are not just here to wish happy birthdays. Having said that, the great Kenny Dalglish turned 70 years old yesterday. Happy birthday to the great man. I think you can tell how excited a certain contributor is that we are discussing the great man. So I'm going to come to Anthony first. Anthony, I was reading your book, as I've told you in various messages. Your love for Kenny Dalglish is left in no doubt. What does the great man mean to you as a Celtic fan, as a Scotland fan, as a football fan in general, as the great man marks his 70th year?
I said it in the book. Kenny Dalglish is the last world-class player this country has produced, in the truest definition of those words. And I don't say that lightly. There's been some exceptional players and some great players, but Kenny Dalglish is by far head and above anybody that this country has produced since he left Celtic. 77, he left Celtic. And for 440 grand. I mean, that's the steal of all steals. Up there with Henrik Larsson, 650 grand. The Jim's older.
Yeah, we're haggling over 15 million for Edouard, and Kenny Dalglish goes for 440 grand.
Jim will know this. When Kenny Dalglish left Celtic, the definition of one man doesn't make a team, but it kind of did, because the season he left, Celtic were fifth in the table, and they were appalling in the cups, I believe. I think Rangers won the treble, didn't they, 78? And Kenny Dalglish scored a win on the European Cup final against Bruges at Wembley. So he is just... I said before, when Keegan left Liverpool, they never thought they would replace him. They thought he was irreplaceable. And they got 10 times the player in Kenny Dalglish. He was a 10 out of 10 player. I challenge anybody to disagree with that. Not just for Celtic, not just for Liverpool, but for Scotland. And he's still the record goal scorer for Scotland alongside Dennis Law. I wasn't fortunate to see Dennis Law, but I'm told he was another world-class player as well. Jim might be able to help me out in that one. I watched a documentary about him recently, Dennis Law turning 80, and I was like, wow, I wish I'd have seen Dennis Law. There's quite a lot of players I wish I'd seen. Jim Baxter's another one. I wish I'd seen him born in the wrong time, but I saw Kenny, and he remains my first football hero, and he's just up there. I don't know if there's anybody above him, but that's just my own opinion.
Absolutely brilliant. That's. I mean, I said to you, I read your book and I really enjoyed the story. Not to give too much away, I would encourage anybody to pick it up. It's called "Gonna Gives a Kick Your Ball, Mister," and it goes through a lot of the. There it is. The plug is there. Jim's got it ready and waiting. Fantastic.
I feel like JP Mason today. JP Mason does this, he does this, he does that. Yes. I am JP Mason today. I am that.
Thank you, Tim.
You've got all your props.
JP in these stories. I love big JP in these stories. I was at Hill in 1995 and I bought a pie. Here's the receipt. It was signed by the groundsman.
Listen, JP, if you're watching, I am distancing myself from these comments. These are Jim Orr's views alone.
Good book shops, get in there. He's a kick of your ball, Mister Tony Haggerty, a visionary.
100%. No, honestly, if you're a football fan. Sorry, on you go, Jim. On you go.
It's my shot. Dalglish, best ever Celtic player. Easily. I think I'm sure there'll be loads of comments from different people, and as Tony said, it's just an opinion. And to my mind, having been watching football since the late 60s, I think there's three players that come to mind: Johnson, Larsson and Dalglish. And if you said who's the most skillful player in that period, that's Johnson. If you say maybe who's the most influential player, that's Larsson. But if you say who's the most all-round player, that's Dalglish. And I think the reason that there's a bit of a division of opinions amongst the Celtic fans was the fact that Kenny Dalglish left before he was at his absolute prime. Whereas we had Johnson at his prime, we had Larsson at his prime, we didn't have Dalglish at his prime. He was almost at his prime. And as Tony said there, he was virtually a one-man team in that 76-77 season. He leaves and they end up fifth and they just fell apart. In my humble opinion, he's easily the best Celtic player of the last 50 years, yeah.
The moniker says
by Tony's book.
Yeah, King Kenny. That's just... I can't buy publicity like that. That's fantastic. Thanks very much.
It's great to hear you guys talking about it, because obviously I am of an age where, I have no memories of Kenny Dalglish playing, so I pride myself on the fact that I have seen Henrik Larsson play and that he's in those conversations with those great players. Just to touch on what Jim said, Tony, I know nobody can touch Kenny Dalglish in your mind, but do you think he is slightly underappreciated by Celtic fans, and certainly by younger Celtic fans? We all know the Lisbon Lions, we know Jimmy Johnston, we know how good a player he was, even those of us who didn't see him play. But I don't hear those conversations as widely amongst Celtic supporters, certainly of a younger age, about Kenny Dalglish and the impact that he had. Do you think there should be a bit more respect put on his name, if that's the phrase you want to use, especially in terms of a historical sense for the club?
Nobody can hold a candle to Kenny Dalglish as a footballer for Celtic, Liverpool and Scotland. That's a point well made. I think Kenny Dalglish's legacy at Celtic's been tainted by the John Barnes era.
Yeah.
As a manager, and the things that happened then when they held press conferences in Baird's Bar, stuff like that. Now, that's a side to Kenny Dalglish that, divides opinion. And I think the idea was sound as a pound to bring the club closer to the fans, but the way they went about it was completely and totally wrong. And the management structure at that time was just a disaster. So that's going to tarnish his legacy. But if you're talking about Kenny the footballer, I implore anybody to dig out any archive footage of Kenny Dalglish playing for Celtic. They will not be disappointed, because most of the time the great Arthur Montford's commentating on it as well, which is even more great. Tremendous stuff. But you look at any game from around that period, Kenny Dalglish seems to score all the goals for Celtic. In that period, there's a few goal scorers like Harry Hood and Jimmy Johnston himself, but you look at these games from that era, Kenny Dalglish scores, I'd say about 70% of the goals or 80% of the goals. Jim will enlighten me on that, who was a better goal scorer or who scored more frequently. But
no, I think I was going to maybe mention the fact that in the Aberdeen game last week, Patrick Klamala played a kind of blind pass to Eddie without looking at it. Dalglish would do that 10 times a game. Just give him the ball without looking, he'll just turn round and he'll play someone in. He was a phenomenal player, and it's funny, he said easily the best ever Celtic player the last 50 years, the best ever Scotland player possibly of all time, easily. And then what he did after Celtic was phenomenal as well. And then how he coped with Heysel and Hillsborough and everything that went with that as well. He's a phenomenal man, never mind football player.
There's a lot of admirable traits, qualities about him, so I mean, you can't.
But the whole point of this was buy Tony. That was the whole point of this call, wasn't it?
I think you raise a good point there, Jim, in terms of, I think that's probably why he's really cemented his place in the hearts of Liverpool fans specifically. As much of a good player as he was, certainly his role and his kind of leadership role in getting justice for the 96 and the way that he handled himself as a person and as a football manager for that club. He was a real linchpin and a real port in a storm for a club that was, undergoing terrible times that we hope are never repeated. But I think as much as he's on the field impact, I think he'll be remembered for years to come for what he did off the field in that situation, and he has to be commended for that. So with that, I say once again, happy 70th birthday to King Kenny. You are a legend at Celtic, at Liverpool, in football in general, and we just wanted to make our feelings known on that. Keep commenting, guys, on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. We are live, as we say, every day at 12:30 for the Odsonne Bulletin, with a few interviews and other things sprinkled in between. So keep up to date, get subscribed on YouTube and get your notifications on so that you know when we go live. Just moving on to the next topic, Jim, I'm going to come to you on this first. I put out a tweet the other night about Frank Lampard. He seems to have come to the fore in terms of rumours again about potential management post at Celtic Park. And I, for one, am a little bit miffed as to why, or confused as to why he's being considered. Short of getting Derby to a playoff final, which obviously they didn't win, his latest outing at Chelsea left much to be desired. And somebody commented to me, actually, which I did agree with, he had a lot of the same issues at Chelsea that we've just got rid of with Neil Lennon. It was a former legend at the club who's potentially got the job based on that, and then gone on to not really show full potential in terms of management style. And I've spoken to a couple of Chelsea fans who say he played some pretty turgid football at times, and given the outlay of money that he had and the talent he had at his disposal, that doesn't bode well for managing a team of likely lesser footballers. What do you make of Frank Lampard? And to open that question up, what exactly do you think we're looking for in a manager that we need to sort of pick out from our candidates?
That was quite a long question for quite a short answer. Never in a million years, Frank Lampard. No chance. That's just paper talk. We would be going backwards to do that. I mean, I think we've already got the manager in place. He's watching things going just now. He doesn't want to come in just now, because who would want to come in just now? I mean, he could lose 1 or 2 games before the end of the season, and you want to come in at the end of the season with a fresh start. Lampard has got no chance. I mean, that would be just the most bizarre appointment ever. It'd be a kind of style over substance, and we don't want style over substance. We want somebody who can coach and knows what they're doing, because the most important thing to have at the club is somebody who can coach players. And if we had maybe a manager this season who could coach the players, I don't think we'd be in the position we're in just now. So from my point of view, Lampard's got absolutely no chance. Tony?
I think you'd be appointing again. He's not done very much in management himself, Lampard, so he's another rookie manager. He's not tried and tested at all. So he got the Chelsea job out of sentiment, basically, and couldn't handle it. He got to the playoff final with Derby and lost. Manager of substance wins these games. A manager of substance takes his chance at a big club and makes an impact. So I'm with Jim that he falls into the no chance category and maybe just pure speculation. And I don't think the Celtic supporters would want him anywhere near the club, because he's not done anything to prove that he deserves a crack at Celtic. So I'm with Jim as well. I want a tried and tested manager. I want somebody with experience that can take Celtic onto bigger and better things at the European stage and back to a level of domestic dominance that they've just witnessed. So you want someone who knows what they're doing, and Celtic was proven time. Liam Brady, John Barnes, rookie managers, they didn't work. It didn't work. So don't even attempt to go down that line again of bringing in somebody with not a lot of experience. It just doesn't work. And history tells them that. So they can't keep making mistakes like that, because it's a rookie mistake. They make it difficult to do that. So I'm with Jim on this one. No Lampard, definitely not.
I think
he's also not very good in sports scene, which is a big factor as well, isn't it?
That is the main criteria, obviously.
That's the main criteria I've heard. If you go in sports scene and you do well, then you're a candidate, surely. That's the new criteria.
Well, if that was the criteria, there's a lot of people that would end up with the job that I wouldn't be too favoured with. But I think as well, what we need to do is forgo or try and ignore our own ignorance about things. I got a comment from there you go, Jungle Lion on Twitter. Celtic don't need a rookie; they need a ready-made manager. And I think we need to forgo our own ignorance on that. As far as like somebody commented to me, what had Wim Jansen done before he came to Celtic? Well, he'd managed 3 teams, he had been an assistant manager at international level, and he'd won 2 domestic cups. There's a history there. There's a proven sort of, and that was at Feyenoord, one of the biggest clubs in Europe. So, certainly at that time anyway. So there is a history there that he's done more certainly than a Frank Lampard or a Neil Lennon or a John Kennedy, if you want to throw his name in the hat. I said it last week. I think we are in danger of devaluing the Celtic job depending on who we appoint here, and we just need to be careful about that. But moving on slightly, we're going to look at the game this weekend. Some might call it a dead rubber. I'm reluctant to say that, because to me no Celtic game is, but Jim, I'll come to you first on this one. What are you wanting to see from the Celtic team? Are you hoping John Kennedy's going to have had more of an impact this week than he was able to, obviously, in his first week in charge? Do you anticipate any big changes either in terms of style of play or selection for the game against Dundee United?
I think it's a dead rubber, as you said, as you didn't say. Last week I was looking for loads of changes. I thought he'd try and put his own stamp on it. And I saw the interview last Friday afternoon, and he said, it's not about me, it's about the team. And as soon as he said that, you thought, it's going to be the same old, because if I've put myself in John Kennedy's shoes, he's got a kind of 8-game interview for something in the future. And I'd have thought he'd want to do his own thing. And I think, we're going to be second no matter what. So I think, he should be able to try things, because I do think it's a dead rubber. So I'd love him to do that. I don't think he will. I think it'll be the same old. I think last week we looked quite good in the first half and then reverted to type. I just see the same this Sunday again. Dundee United have a mixed season. I think they've shipped a lot of goals. They've got an outside chance of the top 6. I don't think they'll be that bothered either. So it's got all the hallmarks of a dead rubber to me.
Point taken, Jim. I think you've put your case across very well. It is indeed a dead rubber. But Anthony, looking at the Dundee United team are obviously, like Jim says, they do tend to ship a lot of goals. They're pretty inconsistent. They occasionally get like a decent result. I think they beat Livingston 3-0 or something like that not too long ago. And apart from that, not really great. But do you think maybe, I saw somebody comment in the WhatsApp group chat last night that they would like to see us just use this as an opportunity to bed in more young players. Do you think that's something that we are going to look to do going forward?
Well, with the Scottish Cup coming back into the reckoning, you've got a major trophy to play for now. So I think Celtic have to take it as seriously as they can and start building up some kind of momentum, so that if our new director of football and head coach are watching these games, they'll be able to cast their eye over who they maybe try and persuade to stay, or who they want to go, or what they need to bring in. That's my hope that's happening in the background. So I think we need to take all the games seriously. But I do believe, Jim, it's hard to take it seriously when everything's have kind of lost, but we now have a major cup competition to win, and you want to be involved in that prestigious game at the end of the season. The season can have some silver lining and a wee bit of hope moving forward. So you have to play for that, and a lot of people are saying, they don't want to win a Dundee United game because they don't want the prospect of Rangers beating Celtic and clinching the title at Parkhead. Celtic want to win all the games. You want to go into the Rangers game with the opposite effect. Not that they're playing to win the league, but that Celtic are playing to stop them from having a perfect season. An invincible league season. So embrace that challenge. Go out there and reel off the next 7-8 games or whatever it is, including the Scottish Cup games, and go and win it. And then let's kind of put some silverware on the trophy cabinet for the end of our season. It's been a bit of a write-off. And then we can maybe welcome the new management team and, go forward with a wee bit of optimism. But it's hard because the big one's gone. And I think motivation levels are, as Jim says, it's not, well, he said it was a dead rubber, but, and if you're in that mindset and frame of mind, then it's hard to kind of put your foot on the pedal again.
Yeah, thanks to Celtic Rambler on YouTube with that comment. Can't let them win the league at Parkhead. Season's been bad enough already. And I think somebody touched on it earlier on in the week. I can't remember who it was, but my preference obviously would be that we don't look to lose any game or throw any game or anything like that to stop them winning. We can't let that be in our heads. My preference would be, if you don't want them to win the league at Celtic Park, don't let them beat us at Celtic Park. We need to win the game. It's as simple as that. Simple as that. Jim, just to pick up on something Tony's just mentioned there, obviously the Scottish Cup is officially coming back, pending the current situation improving even more than it already has done and continuing to do so. Do you think that does inject a bit of optimism back into the season, that we maybe have something else to play for again, and that we might end up not going trophyless this season? Do you think it, injects something into the end of the season that we can look forward to?
I'm kind of trying hard not to be negative, and it's really difficult not to be negative this season, because you just want this season to finish, from my point of view. And here's more games, and I'm thinking, well, here's more cuts to add to the 1,000 cuts we've had already. I saw things on Twitter about, well, it would be good to win the cup, and you're thinking, we struggled to beat Ross County, so what makes us think we're going to win the cup this year? Yeah, it'd be great to win it, and I accept that. I'm also struggling to understand how it's actually going to work, because I think some of the lower league teams aren't going to play because they haven't played any football. I think if the teams in the Championship have got home games, they're going to have to change them, because I'm not sure about how they're compliant over COVID, etc. I think it's a bit of a shambles. We're trying to cram all these games in. For me, I would have just left it. Let's get this season finished and we move on. And the things I'm looking for are the 2 Glasgow derbies. Let's win the last 2 Glasgow derbies to show that we weren't that bad a team after all. And we move on. The Scottish Cup, to me, if it's part of a treble, it's a big, big thing. But it's a bit of a consolation prize, I always think. If you haven't won the league, yeah, it's a wee day out in May. But again, no fans allowed. So it's not exciting me too much, as you can possibly tell. If we win it, great. But I would have left it. I know I'm sounding dead negative. To everyone who thinks I'm dead negative, I'm trying not to be negative, but just we move on. So I'm going to say that. Yes. I can catch it as we move on.
I'll remind you of this, Jim, when we're in the Scottish Cup final and see how you're feeling.
Hold me back.
Tony, what do you think our chances are with the Scottish Cup? As Jim said, we've struggled to beat some pretty pedestrian opposition this season. Is there a real chance that, even if it is something exciting to look forward to, that we've got a chance of winning? Or is it? Are we kind of, is it a pipe dream for us at this point?
Only a fool would bet on Celtic winning the Scottish Cup, so where's the bookies? There's my online account. Correct. I mean, we've lost to Ross County in the League Cup at the moment. There's nothing to suggest that Celtic can win the Scottish Cup. And as Jim said, everybody just wants the season over. He stopped short of the Alpatino there, didn't he? Just when I thought they were out, they draw me back in. I was waiting that line coming. But, it's you've got to be you're now in it again, so you have to compete to win it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think at any stage in this season Celtic have shown anything near the consistency needed to even go and win the cup. You know, the loss to Ross County was lamentable. I mean, absolutely lamentable. So you don't hold out much hope, but because we've been thrust back in it, we have to compete and play to win it. Whether that's possible or not, I'm not sure. But I'm like Jim, I would have left it, but by circumstance, you're now in the eye of the storm again. So you have to be as competitive as you can.
I think I'm in total agreement with you. I think it's one of these situations that the season we've had, I'd sooner have seen it end than prolong the agony, if you want to put it that way. But
yeah, I think if we were miles ahead. If we were miles ahead in the league, definitely play the Scottish Cup. Definitely play it. It's the fact we're miles behind, so just scrap it, move on.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jim. I'll borrow your phrase and say we move on. We move on to hopefully brighter and better things. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, today. We have had a great show. Your comments have been much appreciated. There's been lots going on down in the chat. As I said, keep watching, keep subscribing if you haven't done so already. We will be back with our game coverage this weekend of Dundee United as usual, and next Monday, just to highlight, I will be back with Amy Canavan and Natasha Meikle for a special Monday Club podcast to celebrate International Women's Day and just talk a little bit about our role as contributors to Axon Pod, and obviously look at whatever has happened over the weekend, whatever it may be. Thanks again for all your time today. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you again tomorrow for the game coverage. Thanks very much.